So what's your initial take on FSD 12 beta?
I really like the non-explicit speed setting that you can have the neural net do. It seems like either the foundational entire net, I don't know if it's just a split control neural net, that handles controls, but that's pretty exciting. Demonstrates that there's no heuristics between the pixels coming in to the camera sensors and controls out. It's all nets. So it's nice that it demonstrates.
Have you been keeping up with Omar's posts?
I think I've seen almost all of them, but I did not until Sawyer reposted that one, that speed limit.
Yeah, that's huge, I think.
That's a big one. Yeah.
That's a big one, yeah. Because I have to change it every now and then, depending on highway
Oh,
versus local, etc.
totally.
Bunch of other options. So hopefully it'll be a good
I
adjustment.
do as well. I have a couple areas where I come onto a new road type, and the speed limit is not correct. And if I didn't put my foot on the accelerator, I would get majorly honked at or rear-ended, because it goes from 55, and then for whatever reason in the intersection, it likes to set it to 25, and then it goes to 45. So it sets it for 25 about, like, I don't know, maybe a second, but the car drastically slows down. So I'm hoping that this fixes that.
All right. Meta, welcome.
Thank you.
You've seen Omar's post, I'm sure, on, and I think he said that.
Yeah, I got to go and do a little ride with
So
him.
what's it? Yeah, how
So
was it?
jealous.
It was, yeah, it was good. It was like really dark and raining, and by the end of it, the vehicle just kind of kept throwing up red hands, saying limited visibility. So it's clearly, it seems like at least when the confidence level gets below a certain threshold, it just stops letting you drive, which probably is the right thing for where they are in terms of development. Um, I think I don't necessarily want to say things that maybe Omar wants to put in his video, so I just want to be careful about that. But there's definitely some places where it needs work. Um, my biggest takeaway was it's adjusting the speed really, really well. We went and drove around some like hills and stuff, and it was adjusting the speed around like turns, different types of speed bumps. It took them at different speeds. It was very comfortable with its speed adjustments.
What do you think is leading to that big adjustment, big change?
So I would imagine the heuristics just basically said try to do the max speed that the customer is asking for. And if you can't hit the max speed, then there's probably some heuristic that says, based on the turn in the road coming up, adjust down a certain amount. But there's been plenty of times where like the vehicle won't slow down enough or something along those lines. It certainly would be reasonable to assume that the heuristics never accounted for like the gradient of the road or visual elements on the road, like, where is it darker, where what looks kind of like, road roughness data might be helping them with that kind of stuff. Or is the speed bump this wide or not wide, and categorizing all the different kinds of speed bumps. Those are certainly things that you could do, but probably they didn't do in V11. And with V12, like I think Elon said on the stream as well, many of these things would just be emergent on their own, because by observing how humans drive of those and observing the jerk, vertical, lateral jerk in each of those scenarios, you could just say, hey, we're defining, generally speaking, it's considered 5 meters per second cubed or less is comfortable. So anytime it goes over that, we're going to consider that a bad driver. Every time it does under that, we'll consider that a good driver. And now we got sample data on both sides.
Was it raining while you guys were driving?
Yeah, it was raining. It was dark already, and it started raining even more. So there wasn't like a lot of activity. It was late at night. He had basically finished most of the stuff I think he posted. For a period of time, he didn't record just because he forgot to turn it on. During that time, it did a lot of like, there's these interesting situations in San Francisco where you like drive and there's like a median and you have to kind of like go around it. There was roundabouts. There was one time where I had to like turn right and it was at a yield and it looked like it was yielding for a car that was coming incorrectly. However, we were both wrong because it was actually turning 2 lanes over. So it actually went straight into the left lane because it had a left coming up. There's another time I think Omar thought it missed a turn, but he would have taken the wrong turn, and the turn was actually up ahead. Um, I think he'll probably speak to this as well. There was definitely at least one bug where it stopped at a stop sign, and it obeyed a red light that was at the next intersection. So it went when it turned green, but you know, it didn't go when it should have gone at that stop sign. So there's still some bugs, clearly.
If no one told you that the car had FSD 11 or 12, would you be able to tell the difference? And if you could, maybe just put a probability on it. Like I can definitely tell it. I can maybe tell it. I can probably tell the difference.
I mean, as soon as somebody asked me the question, I probably could have told the difference. Yeah, I would have been prompted at that point.
So you can definitely tell the difference.
The speed, it's very hard to explain. I think this is what I also told him. He made a comment like, you don't get a face cam of him in his videos, but he's like, there's definitely times where he's like, stressing his face because he's like, this is uncomfortable. But the the comment that he quoted me on what I said, it's very Waymo like. The reason was because when you get in the Waymo, and I think we've talked about this in a previous space, it's really smooth in how it like, I don't know how you explain that other than like it's very comfortable in how it's picking the speed at which it's driving. It was definitely picking lots of different speeds. You can see it going up or down 1 or 2 miles. It's not actually just a set speed the whole way. There was times where like, you're banking and it was slowing down a little bit. So I think it's taking more things into account when it's selecting the speed. That part is definitely different. It reminds me of like back in the day, like maybe 5 years ago on autopilot. I remember when I forget what version it was. I think it was 10 came out. There was somebody who made a comment, and it was lane changes are Queen of England buttery smooth, something like that. And I just remember that for a very long time. It feels buttery smooth in terms of its speed selection at this point. Granted, it was nighttime and it was raining, so I don't know if it's going to be the same when there's a lot of traffic around and all that kind of stuff. So obviously, sample size needs to be taken into account, but good progress. Definitely not like definitely not the experience of like it's utter trash and it's not ready for attentive testing. However, I could see if it's throwing up the red hands as often as it is, that wouldn't be comfortable for most people uh, to use as like a daily driver.
So even if you weren't looking at the screen, you can tell the difference. There's 12.
Yeah, yeah. Go over like if you've been in V11 and you've gone over some speed bumps, you go over it in V12, and then somebody asks you, you'd probably notice it. If somebody didn't ask you, you might not notice.
I mean,
Yep.
exactly. So the thing is, I don't mind the speed bumps on V11, and I look at the speedometer, and to see how much is slowing down. Even at 14, 15, 17, 18, I don't mind it. Doesn't bother me that much. I know people comment on a lot, and Omar said it drops down to 8 with
Yeah,
beta 12, I think.
I saw it go down to 9 on some, and then like 12 or 13 on others in the same ride.
So it
And I
depends.
think it was the right choice for both.
Interesting. So it's more nuanced.
Yeah, it's definitely more nuanced. It's like
What was
you're
the
going on the
traffic
same.
level?
It was empty. There was not a lot of traffic
Empty.
at that time.
No traffic. Okay. Interesting.
It was in the middle of the night, so I'll take what I can get.
Yeah. Wes, do you have any comments on what we discussed so far?
Yeah, a few. Did you do any unmarked roads, or were they all striped?
If you're familiar with San Francisco, there's an area by Sunset Beach. We tried to force it to make a U-turn there, and a couple of times on the navigation, it looked like it was going to make a U-turn, and then it got wise and just skipped that turn and went forward and made like a left onto a stop sign and then another left. So it seems like it's got some L4-ish chops coming in the nav where it's like, no, I'm just not going to do the things I can't do. At least that's a very, you know, anthropomorphization of that's me anthropomorph. Ah, dang, I can't say the word. You know what I mean?
Did you notice lane centering,
Um,
or was that more human?
it was much more human. I didn't notice it, but Omar made a comment about how it was much more eager, more willing to go over the lines and go into drivable space. I'm sure Omar will talk about this, but there was like one disengagement I remember as we were getting onto the highway merge lane. There was a solid white line, and there was traffic to our right that was merging, and the vehicle that should have given us the right of way didn't. And it seemed like the vehicle might have gotten into a weird situation, and he turned it over to the left. So like, there's still some of those situations that are going to need to be fixed. But if you ask me, is V11 doing the same thing? I would have said yes. That probably exists in V11 too.
Gotcha. The other thing that I noticed from his videos was that the steering wheel jerk seemed to be a lot less. It seemed to be smoother. Would you agree with that, or what's your take?
Oh, 100%, 100%. Like the robotic, like left, right, or when even when it was doing turns, it was like committing and going. I really like the one change in the visualization. You can kind of maybe in some of the videos you'll see it more clearly, but there's times where it was like at a stop sign and it was about to go, so it would draw the line going forward. And then as a car came and it decided not to go anymore, it just hid the path. So it didn't, you don't have that wavy path that you
I noticed
get
that
when
too.
it's like planning. Yeah, it's like I'll drive in front of the car, I'll drive behind the car, like it just keeps giving you those real-time updates. And I think that might be great for developers, but it's confusing for a user maybe. So it was doing a lot more of the blue line, how far out it was drawing it was varying. So even on a straight road, at times it was drawing it further out, sometimes it was drawing it not as far out. I feel like that might be a representation of the confidence in the token window. So
Yeah.
maybe, the token window is 5 seconds long and it's saying I'm only confident for the next 30 seconds or
Right.
whatever.
So you could see the blue line extending when it's more confident. So plan it further ahead.
Yeah, I would say more like I could observe it shrinking when it was less confident.
Mm-hmm.
Although sometimes it would shrink to also indicate confidence that it's not going to go. Right? That's another way to think about it.
Yeah. Wes?
Much like
Wes, sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
Sorry, much like the steering wheel jerk seems a lot better. Was the brake pedal also smoother? In other words, it wasn't like making those shuddering sounds or any type of noise or anything coming from the brake pedal moving quickly.
Yeah, you're talking about like the press and release,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a solid press in a very, very limited sample size here.
Okay. Yeah, I realize it's a
But
small sample set. I get it.
yeah, I'm not saying that for yours. It's just the other people
Oh yeah,
listening.
no,
Um,
appreciate it.
there were a couple of times where it definitely stopped short of some fresh yellows that it could have probably gone through. However, I would argue nothing unsafe, right? So probably good not to run the red. But these are the kinds of things that like over time you can imagine that they say, okay, hard braking, we might increase the negative reward for that a little bit. But running a red light is extremely, extremely big negative reward. So it might just say, hey, I'd rather not risk even possibly running a red because I don't know how long this yellow light's going to take to turn red.
Do you feel like the blue line, or I don't know if we could just call it the intenticle or something? Do you feel like it was more or less spot on, or did you like? I really love the fact that it's not showing those crazy paths. The squiggly line in tentacles, and it's not wiggling all over the place. But
Yeah, the wiggles have gone down. Remember a while back, like a year ago, we were talking about we would one of the things we expect to see 6 months before release is the wiggling
yep.
go down. I feel like the wiggling has gone down, but I think when you're in the car, you're looking around at a lot of other things. I wasn't just like staring at it the whole time, so more data needed.
Yeah, I was, trying to see if there was any, and because you guys were in an S, and there isn't a separate HDMI feed coming in, it's tiny, so it's hard to tell. But it did look like that, and that's cool. I was really glad to see
Yeah,
the jerk going down as well.
yeah, there was a stretch of windy roads, and in my experience on windy roads, the vehicle goes in too fast sometimes or too slow, and it leads to discomfort. And these windy roads had banks on them. You know what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say? Like sometimes the road's a little bit higher, sometimes
Yep.
lower,
Camber.
and naturally humans adjust their speed, and the vehicle actually adjusted its speed. And so this is like a straight line, and in the past, it feels like the car just kind of does a mad dash through that stuff. So if if the vehicle was driving in a windy road that I'm used to driving, I think I could have told the difference between 11 and 12, or I would at least thought it was a human driving it.
Cool. Very cool. Maybe one more. And granted, if you're like trying to save stuff for Omar, but was there anything that like jumped out at you where you could say like it's materially better? In other words, like I tweeted this, but if you want to wait for Omar to say it, that's fine. But like, do you see any like neural net limitations at this point? Obviously, it's a small sample set, but wondering your thoughts there.
Yeah, to be fair, I asked him if he didn't want me to say anything. He didn't say anything, so he's fine with me saying whatever. Obviously honest. I think it's really hard to explain, but the speed limit, like the speed adjustments, I know that maybe it doesn't sound like a big deal, but once you get in it and you feel the comfort difference, I think it's one of those things that once you've experienced it, it's like, oh my God, the other one was so shitty.
No, I do.
It's hard
Totally
to
get it.
explain.
Well, how about this? Good question. So, do you feel like reaction times were quicker? You know how in the past, you could like see a pedestrian walking and or a car coming up, and then it would visualize it. You could feel the latency or the lag. Do you feel like that might be quicker now?
I don't have firsthand experience of that. Omar mentioned he might be posting a video of this, bicyclists coming across and how quickly the car reacted to knowing the bicyclist was going to turn. I will say this again, hard. These things are hard to confirm. So take these with a grain of salt. But there were definitely times where we were driving on the road and there were stop signs facing the road and it didn't phantom brake. But it's unclear to me if in those, I'm not familiar with that road enough to say that it used to phantom brake there. But in similar situations, it's clearly phantom brake in the
Gotcha.
past.
Did you experience any phantom braking?
No.
Oh boy, that's exciting.
Short sample size.
Right. Got it. I totally get it.
It's only a couple mile ride, right?
Yeah, it was probably like max 5 to 10 miles tops.
Yeah. Did you have a multi-lane roundabout?
No, I think we only had single lane roundabouts.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it
Yeah,
was
I mean,
empty.
it's hard to tell on a ride like that. Heavy traffic is really what the only thing that reliably threw the V11.4.9 that I've been testing off. So unless you have a heavy traffic situation, then it's hard to say. But there's some new functionality. I mean, that's definite. So the max speed adjustment is a big deal, I think.
To be fair, when we did the ride, he didn't know about the setting yet. And I asked, there was one moment, for example, we were on a highway and it was falling kind of close, not like dangerously close, but kind of close for given the rain and splash coming from the car in front of us. Normally people would give it more space if there was more, there's not that many cars on the road, so you might as well give it more space. And we were discussing like the follow distance and how that's not in there anymore. So those kinds of things could still be improved, but I'm wondering if when you give it more freedom to like change lanes, to set its own speed, to decide its own follow distance, that naturally the neural nets should be able to make better decisions, just like with the speed thing, right? So I think reality here is loosening constraints in a very safe way is kind of like what they have to do right now.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Does last night's ride change your view about timelines to, different levels or robotaxi, etc.? That's really the
It's
only definition of material, I think.
fair.
Like instead of saying material update, is it a material update? That's a very vague term. Does it change your view?
It's slower than I expected. I will say that, right? Like I'm obviously off. A year ago, I thought in 8 months we would be, I would argue, where I think we'll be in about a month. So classic engineering, I'm off by a little over 50%, right? 150%, the general multiple you give an engineer. But I'm a little bit off.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, we don't know how fast the iteration speed will be from here. There's that, but it also seems like they're being much more careful here. So, I mean, however you want to paint it, but I think it's getting close. It definitely did pull over to curbs really well.
So that's new functionality, right?
Yeah, that is new functionality, but it blocked driveways. So I mean, one time it seemed like it was intentionally picking a spot, not blocking a driveway. So it's unclear if it always will block a driveway or not. But those things it could probably learn, which is probably okay to block a driveway temporarily if you're picking a passenger up or not. So it's unclear if that's actually a negative either.
And before I go to machine, was there a situation ever where there just wasn't a spot to pull up to, and then in that situation, what did it do? Did you just keep going to the next block until you found one?
Didn't have that situation.
Okay. Machine, what do you think? The tweets that you've seen, the videos that you've seen, do you think it changes your view of when we're going to get to, not paying attention, no nags? By the way, were the nags? Oh, no, never mind. That's irrelevant.
The nags were
Not
much
applicable.
higher, much higher.
There are no nags with them, right?
No. There were many nags. It nagged a lot. I think that was one of the things they probably told him on the phone is like, this thing's going to nag all the time because of where it is in its development cycle.
Right. Machine, what do you think?
Well, trying to parse through Meta's like facade, how he's trying to
Optimism
word
bias.
things. I think he basically said that it sucked, that it was worse than the V11. Although it drives better, more like a human, and I believe the infrastructure there is obviously in place for it to improve. I think he's saying right now it sucks worse than V11. So the question is, in terms of, you get into the details. I'm just focused on where is this thing going to be in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years. Certainly, it opens up the opportunity for improvement more rapidly. But when was Musk's demo? Was that August, September, V12?
August.
So we're almost like 5 months ish away, and it's not like this thing's gone leaps and bounds ahead in 5 months. And obviously, their compute was more limited then. I don't even know what we know now of how much compute they've added. The last we knew it was like 2x, even though obviously their goal was much higher in that time frame. I'm not seeing a trajectory here right now where this thing is going to get to 10x, let's say, improvement in reducing critical disengagements in 6 months or a year right now. We're going to be happy when this thing's probably better than V11 by summer. I think that would be a more reasonable timeline.
We don't need to do a coffee bet, but I would easily take a coffee bet that in a year from now, you will disagree with yourself.
In a year from now is when
Just do a coffee bet.
you're.
Why don't you want to do a coffee bet?
What is the?
I don't know how to structure it. I don't know how to structure it because machine would be the person measuring himself.
Well, there's we already have a coffee bet, which I can't remember what the date was for. Obviously
End of May, I think.
May for L4. Do you stand by that bet right now?
Again, it's going to come down to how you define it, but yeah, I think maybe not a commercial. Probably, definitely not commercial at this point, given the pace. But I think it is close. Like if you remove the fact that it was at night in the rain, L4 can easily say, okay, I don't drive in the night, I don't drive in the rain. There's all these kind of restrictions you can like put if you're just talking L4. It's certainly the case that they can select situations in which it can drive well. Now, the places where it was throwing up the red hands because of the outside conditions, it's hard for me to say how it would have done had those conditions not been that way. So I can't speak to that.
So I thought we were talking about generalized L4 back then, but now it seems like you're moving to, well, if we can do L4 in a tunnel, maybe, and that counts.
I don't think you know the definition of L4 and L5 by this
Now I
conversation.
understand
L4
there's
literally means
operational domains.
selecting.
Yeah, I get that. So, but now you can cherry pick. Well, how restrictive are your ODD?
If the vehicle could do robotaxi during the day when it's sunny in most cities, it could start making money. So
So
I don't see why that's
you
restricting it.
that's fine. So during the day, no inclement weather, this thing should be able to do L4 in any city in the U.S. Is that too
That's a
wide?
fair goal.
Are you
That's
saying
a fair
today
goal.
or May?
May.
Okay, that's very optimistic, I think. I mean, but I'm staying out of this. I'm just listening. Sorry. Yeah, going forward, I want to stay out of a little kind of making forecasts and predictions again. And then Omar said he's heading home now, so maybe he'll join us a little later. And if the discussion is still going strong, we can let it go beyond an hour, but definitely not more than 2 hours. Wait, by the way, why don't we just focus on that for a little bit? This new
Focus
what
on
do you
what?
guys think about this new format? 1 hour.
I like it. It's very easy, especially if it's like around a similar time. Makes it easy to plan, hop in. I don't know how much value you get out of like the long time period.
Machine, what do you think?
I think it's good. It makes me more productive because there's less time listening to Meta and Omar. And I would plan. My plan is to absolutely dominate the 1 hour time.
And now, what do you think about? No, I'm not going to let that happen. But what do you think about? That's literally why I exist. Like that's literally why people are paying me right now on Patreon is to stop Machine from dominating the entire hour.
In fact, you should have written that in some of your posts. I think you would have gotten more Patreon subscribers.
Maybe.
Really. Pay me to shut this guy up.
Maybe Patreon subscribers can vote on specific polls about machine and things like that.
Yeah. What was I going to say? And now, what do you think about kind of just sticking to replies for questions and comments, which really reduce moderation need as well? Because I know exactly who should be on the speaker board on a given topic. I don't need to kind of like gauge what someone has to say. I can just look at the replies. I mean, they can still voice their opinion, in the replies. I think that's the better way of doing it.
I'm a big favor of authoritarianism, if I can pronounce it right while I'm chewing. And so, as long as you're competent, which for now I think you're mentally stable enough, we'll have to evaluate over time. But I think that's the most efficient way. Yeah, very control everything.
Machine has gotten much nicer to Yaman since he started dating Machine's mom.
By the way, I recall, I think last week you kicked me off. It was probably deserved because I don't know, the space was all screwed up and I started speaking because no one was speaking, but it probably was not the case that I could not hear anyone else. So I apologize for
that. Aaron Kanziorek, I don't know what you apologize for. You don't apologize for anything right now. Did you apologize to me? Who did you apologize to? What the hell did you just say?
Last week you kicked me off the spaces, and I think because I was speaking, no one else was speaking.
I don't remember. I moved on. I don't even remember.
All right, well, that's good. Anyways, I'm just a kind, considerate individual, so I'm offering my apology, as is what a normal, healthy person does.
Well, Aaron Kanziorek says, I would pay $100 a month to know Machine is blocked from this space. What do you think about that?
I mean, that's a pretty powerful incentive.
Hey, Machine, you can make an alt account.
I think you might have to do it.
I'm literally right now basically paying. Essentially, I'm paying $100 a month to have you on the space by turning that deal down. Well,
I think you might have to go for it. I mean, if that is a serious deal, in all seriousness, if that was a serious deal, someone's going to pay you $100 a month for me not to speak, I would tell you to take it, the deal. Absolutely, I would tell you to take the deal.
Let the record show Machine thinks his contributions are worth less than $100 a month.
All right, so Meta is adjusting his estimates a little bit later, right? Meta sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, too little sample data to really make anything confident here, but I'm
Right.
already wrong. So I would say if you asked me to before the ride or after the ride, I would have to adjust my timelines either way.
Well, I'm in that coffee bed with you. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, sorry. I don't know what to say. I'm
And then Machine, are you adjusting your estimates back or forward?
I would like to have better insight in terms of their trajectory for adding compute, and that's the one thing I'm not really sure of. I mean, they've shown us their graph of what they want, but we know they're already behind. If I assume that they're going to be lagging in the up in the compute to what they optimally wanted, I still think that I would probably have to push it back from November 2024. That's not that far away, and then the progress is pretty slow, to be honest. And obviously, it's going to improve, and the rate of progress will go up, but I don't think it's anywhere near the level and it's not going to get there in 8 months. Yeah, I mean, like common sense, big picture. Most of your listeners here are probably common sense people. They can understand the big picture. You're not going to take something that like is barely passable L2 and make it reliable L4 in half a year. It's very unlikely. If you just study the rate of progress that's happened over the last 6 months. I'm probably back into 2025, but I don't know. I don't know. There's too many variables unknown.
Meta?
Yeah, I think the next time we do a caveat on this, it should be structured by both people pick a date and you see who's closer, because end of 2025 is ridiculous in my mind. It's just so ridiculous. You're comparing the progress on a heuristic-based system to a neural net-based system. I posted a very poorly, but communicates the point, altered photo of how the PPO process works and how RLHF works, and for our large language models, that same approach should work for end-to-end systems. If you look at the M. Gale paper from Waymo, they're doing the same thing. So this is not like a new invention or a new approach. So I don't know why it should take that much longer for Tesla if we think they're all competent engineers there too.
I don't think you were. Maybe I misspoke or you weren't listening well. I didn't say end of 2025. I just said into 2025.
Mm-hmm.
I
I thought
don't
you said
know.
back end.
No, I just said
No, he
into.
said back to
Yeah.
back to 2025.
Okay,
But he
okay,
was thinking
misheard.
like end of 2024. Right?
But I think there's still so many unknowns. I get. Yeah, you just add compute, and the loss will keep going down. But how much compute does Waymo have? And how much compute does Tesla have? Obviously, Tesla has more data. There's just a lot of factors here, and model distillation. They have more limited compute than Waymo for inference. I'm just talking about in terms of timelines here. I agree. Like you're trying to I agree that the rate of progress. I don't want to say exponential, but the rate of progress will increase. So now you're trying to estimate the slope of the derivative here, and that's hard to know at this point. So I don't know how, but I don't know how you're so confident that it's going to be this year even. Like how can you be so confident on something that is still very far away? I think that's maybe another difference between us. Statistically, I don't think this thing is close. Even if it's a great L2, that doesn't mean it's going to be reliable L4, door to door, most cities, even in great weather, until you have another like 10x improvement from where V11, dot whatever the last version was. Maybe you disagree. You don't think it has to be a 10x improvement in reliability.